There is a default setting within you, an invisible architecture of the soul, and it dictates whether reality bends to you or whether you bend to reality. You might not feel it consciously, but this internal stance is the unseen force shaping every event, every encounter, every outcome in your life. This isn't about merit or destiny or luck. It is purely about the frequency you broadcast, the resonance of how you fundamentally recognize or fail to recognize yourself. In the next few minutes, we will explore why so much of life feels like a struggle, why prayers seem to echo in an empty chamber, why manifestation feels like a constant, desperate negotiation with forces unseen. We will touch upon a profound truth that Carl Jung unearthed from the bedrock of the human psyche, a truth that has nothing to do with external power, but everything to do with an internal throne that sits vacant. Most people are living like paupers in their own kingdom, shivering outside the gates, waiting for an invitation to enter. But what if that invitation can never come from the outside? What if your entire experience of reality is simply waiting for you to change this one single internal posture? This isn't just a philosophical exercise. It is an invitation to re-examine the very foundation of your existence. You will uncover layers within yourself that have been dormant for lifetimes, and you will finally grasp why the universe so often appears indifferent or deaf. At the end of this journey, there is no magic spell, no complex ritual. There is only a quiet internal shift, a single click of realization that changes everything, without you ever having to speak a word aloud. You were taught to ask. You were taught to plead. The echoes of generations before you are etched into your very nervous system. A cellular memory that whispers, justify your existence. Make yourself small to be loved. Do not take up space until space is offered to you. This ancestral conditioning runs so deep it feels like gravity. You approach life as if it were a tribunal, a panel of judges deciding your worth. But here is the fundamental truth. Sovereignty does not negotiate. A queen does not ask for what is already hers. She recognizes it, not through arrogance, but through an unshakable knowing. In his therapeutic work, Jung observed this dynamic repeatedly. Every human possesses a core of absolute sovereignty, a center he called the self. This is not the ego, not the personality you wear like a carefully constructed outfit. The self is the innermost nucleus, the seat of absolute authority over your own being. But most people have never stepped foot in this inner sanctum. They orbit it, circling at a safe distance, consumed by doubts, by the fear of being too much or not enough. They wait for a sign, for validation, for anyone at all to tell them they are finally allowed to arrive. And while they wait, the throne sits empty. The universe does not respond to your words. It doesn't respond to your affirmations or your vision boards if they are broadcast from a place of underlying lack. It responds with flawless precision to the frequency of your inner state, your energetic signature in the moments when no one is watching. If internally you are a beggar, life will provide endless scenarios for you to beg. If internally you are one who must justify your right to exist, reality will constantly corner you, demanding an explanation. This is not a judgment. It is not punishment. It is simply physics. It is resonance. Do you understand the critical difference between arrogance and sovereignty? Arrogance is a compensation for an internal wound. It is loud. It postures. It needs witnesses and applause. It is constantly justifying its own existence. Sovereignty, however, is silent. It doesn't argue. It doesn't debate. It simply is. A queen doesn't need to prove she is a queen. Her presence is the proof, not because of external crowns or titles, but because of an internal certainty that seeks no validation. The universe recognizes this distinction perfectly. It ignores the masks and responds only to the truth of what lives within you. Perhaps as you listen to this, you feel a disturbance, a resistance, an agitation at the very idea that you could be the key to everything. This resistance is important. Pay attention to it. It is showing you exactly where an old identity is clinging on for dear life, an identity built on the premise that someone else is responsible for what happens to you. But this identity is not your true face. It is a costume, shaped by fear and the desperate need to be loved. Even if the price of that love is your own self-denial, there is a wound inside you that goes deeper than personal history. Jung identified it as the maternal complex, but it is more than just that. It is an archetypal injury, an experience carried by so many who know the feeling of not being seen, not being truly mirrored in their essence. Perhaps as a child you looked for validation and found only silence, or worse, criticism. Perhaps you received love, but only conditionally, only when you suppressed your exuberance, only when you made yourself convenient. These early imprints left a profound conviction. Your worth is not inherent. It is conditional. It must be earned and declared by an external authority. This pattern is what Jung called a negative identification with the maternal archetype. You have internalized the belief that your dignity is negotiable, that it can be given and taken away, and so you wait. You wait to be seen. You wait to be chosen. You wait for someone somewhere to finally tell you that you are enough. But as you wait, you are broadcasting a frequency of incompleteness, and the universe can only reflect what you broadcast. It's not a judgment. It is physics on the deepest level. This waiting position creates a state of vibrational paralysis. Imagine you are locked in a room, but the key is in your own pocket. You have it. You've always had it. But you sit by the door waiting for someone to come and unlock it from the outside. You could leave at any second, but you remain stationary, captive to a story that tells you that you are not authorized to use the key. This is the essence of self-imposed exile. You banish yourself from your own kingdom, not because the gates are locked, but because you have forgotten you hold the key. In analytical psychology, we speak of the anima and animus, the internal feminine and masculine energies. Regardless of your gender, you carry both. The feminine principle is receptive, magnetic, it draws in. The masculine principle is active, penetrating, it builds. When your internal feminine energy is wounded, you lose your magnetism. You lose the capacity to receive. And so you begin to hunt. You chase, you grasp, you demand. You try to take what was meant to come to you. And the more you chase, the faster it flees. Have you ever noticed how you replay the same scenarios in your life? The same relationships with different faces? Situations where you feel unseen, undervalued, or forced to prove yourself. This is not a coincidence. Your unconscious mind is a loyal servant. It seeks to validate its core beliefs. If your deepest unexamined belief is, I am unworthy or I must serve, the world will faithfully provide you with a script that makes you the servant. Not because the world is cruel, but because it is a mirror. It is showing you what you believe about yourself. Even if that belief is so deeply buried, your conscious mind denies it. This is why your state oscillates. One day you feel special, unique, almost superior. The next you feel worthless, invisible, and forgotten. This violent swing between inflation, feeling better than, and deflation, feeling less than, is a clear sign you have not yet found your center. The center is neither. The center is not a comparison. It simply is. It is the place where you stop measuring yourself against others because you realize that comparison itself is an act of self-abandonment. What happens to sovereignty that is rejected? It doesn't vanish. Energy is never destroyed, it only transforms. When you deny your inner queen, she manifests in the shadow, and there she curdles. She becomes the silent tyrant, controlling through manipulation, using passive aggression to wield the power she isn't allowed to claim openly. Or she becomes the martyr, expressing her magnitude through suffering, seeking to be special through the sheer weight of the burdens she endures. Or she becomes the secret judge, silently condemning everyone else to feel superior without ever having to carry the weight of real responsibility. These shadow forms are not evil. They are simply authentic energy that has been denied an authentic expression. Jung recognized that the shadow doesn't just hold what we despair. It holds the gold we were afraid to claim. Your magnitude, your authority, your power to shape your life, all of it rests in the shadow, as long as you refuse to bring it into the light, and it waits there sometimes for an entire lifetime, asking to be integrated. But why this resistance? Why is it so terrifying to claim your own sovereignty? Because sovereignty means absolute responsibility. As long as you believe someone else is at fault for your life, your parents, your boss, the government, the system, you have an excuse. You get to be the victim. And the victim is always innocent, never has to change, and can always point a finger. The moment you step onto your throne, that story ends. You recognize that everything in your kingdom is either your creation or your permission. There are no external saviors, no one else to blame, no more excuses. There is only you, and the choice you make in every single moment. This is the true terror of greatness. It is not the fear of failure, it is the fear of your full power and the responsibility it demands. And so, most people choose to remain small, to wait, to hope for a savior who will never come, who can never come. The only one who can save you is yourself, not the ego, but the self, the part of you that was never wounded, that has always been sovereign and is merely waiting to be acknowledged. You look for sovereigns on the outside. You search for gurus, mentors, spiritual leaders, or romantic partners who seem to embody the power you lack. You project your unclaimed authority onto them, hoping they will give you the peace you are missing. This is the great projection of the lost kingdom. You have forgotten that you are the source, and so you search everywhere for something that can only be found within. This search can last a lifetime, and it will never end until you realize that what you are seeking is the quality of your own consciousness. Jung described the process of individuation as the journey back to the self. Individuation is not self-improvement. It is not about becoming a better version of your personality. It is not a collection of skills or achievements. It is the profound shift from identifying with the ego to experiencing the self, that center that exists beyond all roles, masks, and wounds. Individuation means you stop trying to be someone good, and you begin to recognize who you already are. And who you are is sovereign, not because you earned it, but because sovereignty is the natural, inherent quality of the self. The self does not argue, it does not explain, it does not justify, it simply is. When you touch this place, even for a moment, you find a silence within you that needs nothing. It proves nothing. It seeks no applause. This silence is not empty. It is full. It is full of presence, of certainty, of a power that never has to raise its voice to be effective. This is the frequency of the Queen. It is not dramatic. It is clear. The path to this place is through an alchemical union within yourself. The masculine and feminine inside you must join, not battle. This means you stop looking outside of yourself for completion. You recognize that you are already whole, that the polarities within you can be integrated. When this happens, your entire vibration changes radically. You stop operating from a place of getting. You begin being from a place of having. And the universe, which only responds to vibration, must now respond to you differently. But this process requires a death. The identity of the beggar must be shed. The version of you that explains, that justifies, that asks for permission, that waits to be chosen, that version must go. This is not a comfortable death. It feels like a loss, a farewell to a familiar, safe world. But it is necessary. As long as you cling to the old identity, you cannot fully inhabit the new one. You cannot be both the pauper and the sovereign. You must choose. And perhaps the choice doesn't happen in one grand, cinematic moment. Perhaps it happens in the quiet, in a single breath where you suddenly realize you have always been the sovereign of your own life. Every act of submission was an unconscious choice. No one ever took your power. You gave it away again and again, out of fear, out of habit, out of the mistaken belief that smallness meant safety. But smallness does not bring safety. It only brings a life that was never truly lived. The posture that changes everything is not loud. It is not aggressive. It is an internal stillness saturated with certainty. It is a presence that does not question its own value and does not justify itself before any external force. This posture doesn't come from willpower. It comes from realization. You realize you were never outside your own kingdom. You only believed you were in exile, and in that realization you stand up, not physically but internally. You take the seat that has always been waiting for you. Once you have touched this posture, something fundamental shifts. You begin to decree rather than negotiate. This does not mean you become demanding or controlling. It means you acknowledge what is already true on the level of potential, and you allow its manifestation. You no longer ask the universe for permission. You recognize that the universe acts through you, that you are not separate from the creative force, but an expression of it. And from that knowing, you act differently, you speak differently, you are different. The frequency of a command is entirely different from the frequency of a request. A request inherently carries the signature of lack. It says, "I do not have, please give this to me." A command, in the sense of inner sovereignty, carries the signature of fullness. It says, "This is already true on a deeper level, and I am now aligning with its appearance in the visible." The universe does not respond to your word. It responds to the energetic signature behind the words. And when your signature is fullness, reality must reflect fullness back. Doubt is the language of exile. Every time you question your inner sovereignty, you hand the scepter back to chaos. You abdicate. You leave your throne and return to the waiting room, to the uncertainty, to a dependency on external circumstances. But the throne waits. It doesn't vanish. It is always there, ready for you to occupy it as soon as you remember. The question was never whether you are worthy. The question is whether you are willing to bear the full responsibility that comes with that worth. Queens do not blame. They do not wait. They do not delegate their crown to others. They recognize that everything that happens in their kingdom is either their creation or the result of their permission. This is radical self-responsibility. It is not a moral burden, but a profound liberation, because when you recognize that you have created or allowed all of it, you also recognize that you have the power to change it. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are the creator of your internal stance towards circumstance, and that stance shapes your experience. The universe is not a judge. It is a mirror. It does not punish or reward based on a moral code. It simply reflects the frequency you are broadcasting through your deepest self-identification. If you experience yourself in your core as someone who must wait, who must prove, who must ask permission, then the world will faithfully provide situations that mirror that belief. Not because you deserve it, but because the law of resonance knows no exceptions. Have you ever noticed that people who are internally still and centered seem to effortlessly attract what others are desperately hunting for? This isn't magic, it's vibration. When you are no longer vibrating from a place of not having, you stop sending out signals of lack. And the universe, which is only a reflection, cannot give you lack in return. It can only respond with what matches your internal frequency. This is why all change begins internally. It begins in the quality of your consciousness, in the way you know yourself. The very idea that you must earn your place is, itself, a form of internal slavery. Earning presupposes an external authority that judges you. But who is this authority? God? The universe? Fate? In truth, it is only the projection of your own internal judge, the one you were taught to obey. You have internalized the voice that tells you that you are not good enough, and now you live your life trying to appease that voice. But the queen does not justify herself. She recognizes that she is an expression of the divine, not separate from it, not less than it, but a channel through which creation itself moves, as long as you believe that real power is external, in money, in status, in a partner, in validation. You will remain a servant to those things. You give them authority over your internal well-being, and the universe simply waits. It waits for you to recognize that the only true power is the power of your own consciousness, the ability to know yourself as who you are, beyond all external forms. There is a paradox here that must be understood. This is not about controlling everything. It is about ceasing to ask for permission to exist. It is a sovereign surrender, not a passive one. You recognize that you are not separate from the source, and from that knowing, you let go. But this letting go is done from a place of fullness, not resignation. It is the letting go of who you thought you had to be, to finally arrive at who you already are. Synchronicities will begin to appear as you live from this posture, but they are not the cause of your change. They are the confirmation. They are the universe winking at you, showing you that your internal frequency has shifted. These signs are beautiful, but they are not the goal. The goal is the internal peace that no longer needs the signs, because it is anchored in itself. When you begin to live from the posture of the queen, you will experience a new kind of loneliness. It is not the loneliness of abandonment. It is the loneliness of sovereignty. Many connections you once had will dissolve, not through conflict, but through simple incompatibility. People who are vibrating at the frequency of waiting, blaming, and begging will no longer understand your resonance. They will feel uncomfortable in your presence because you have become a mirror for something they are not yet ready to see. This isn't arrogance. It's just resonance. You are a tuning fork, and you will attract people and situations that match your pitch. When your pitch changes, your entire field changes. Old relationships that were built on codependency, on the need for validation, or on a shared sense of victimhood cannot exist in this new frequency. They fall away not because you reject them, but because they no longer have a place to plug into your inner kingdom. The true sovereign needs no subjects. They need no audience. They rule their inner kingdom with or without witnesses because their sovereignty does not depend on external recognition. It is not a performance. It is a state of being, and this state is complete in itself. There is nothing to prove, nothing to demonstrate. The crown is not worn to be seen. It is worn because it is the natural order of the self. You may come to realize that there was never a battle at all. There was only a long refusal to sit on the throne that was always yours. You believed the stories of unworthiness, of lack, of the need to prove yourself, but those stories were never true. They were just shadows on the wall that you mistook for reality, and now, in this moment of recognition, they dissolve. Not because you fought them, but because you simply withdrew your attention from them and turned towards what is real. This transformation happens without fanfare. There is no external revolution, no dramatic event for others to see. It is a quiet, internal reorganization that changes everything. No fanfare, no justification, no need to prove a single thing. It is as if an invisible hand rearranges the furniture of your psyche, and suddenly, everything makes sense. Not because you received new information, but because you finally understand the information that was always there. The self invites you, but it never forces you. The invitation is always present, in every moment. It is the invitation to stop betraying yourself, to stop making yourself smaller than you are, to stop waiting for a permission slip that will never come, because it doesn't need to come. You are the permission. You are the authority. You are the sovereign of your own kingdom. And this truth is waiting to be recognized by you, not as a concept, but as a living, breathing experience. In every moment you are deciding, do you rule or do you self-exile from your center? The universe responds to this decision with absolute fidelity. There is no delay, no exception. The reality you experience is always the mirror of where you have positioned yourself internally. And once you have truly settled onto your throne, once you embody the posture of the sovereign, not as a role but as your truth, then everything changes. Not because the universe changed, but because you did. And the universe can only reflect who you have become. There is no guarantee this path is easy. There is no promise that others will understand it, but there is a certainty that it is true. And that truth is the only authority that matters. Not the opinions of others, not the approval of the world, but the silent, unshakable certainty within you that you have finally come home to yourself. And from this place you can live, not as one who asks permission, but as one who simply is. This journey doesn't end. The sovereign isn't crowned once and then remains static. The crown is a posture, a choice you make again and again, every day, every moment. You will have moments where you fall back, where old patterns rise up, where the temptation to become small again is overwhelming. That is human, but now you know the difference. You know what it feels like to sit on your throne, and you know what it feels like to stand outside the gates waiting. And that knowledge gives you the choice. If you are hearing this, and something inside you is stirring, if a memory is surfacing, telling you that this is true, that is not an accident. That is your own self calling you, inviting you to come home. It is not waiting for the perfect moment. It is waiting for you to realize that this moment right now is the moment, not tomorrow, not when the circumstances change, not when you feel ready. Now, in this breath, in the silence between these words, the law of the Queen is not a law imposed upon you from the outside. It is the law of your own being, waiting to be lived. It is the remembrance that you were never separate from your power, from your dignity, from your place in the cosmos. You only forgot, and forgetting is not a sin. It is simply a state that is dissolved by remembering. And perhaps this moment, listening to these words, is the moment that remembrance begins. If this path resonates, if something inside you has awakened or remembered, then I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here, we explore the depths of the human soul, the quiet truths left by minds like Carl Jung, and the pathways that lead us back to our own self. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Share what rose up in you as you listened, because in this exchange, we recognize we are not alone on this journey. Every comment, every reflection is a sign that the sovereign within you is beginning to awaken, that you are ready to take your seat. And perhaps that is the beginning of something that will change your life forever.